Ready to go? Excellent. All right, we're here May 20th, 2025, 5:30, a little bit late for the special meeting regarding the evaluation process, goals, and procedures. Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Rourke.
Here.
Councilor Scott.
Here.
Councilor Yem.
Here.
Councilor Belanger.
Here.
Councilor Chow.
Here.
Councilor Dakota.
Here.
Councilor Getchia.
Here.
Councilor Janesh. Councilor Mercier.
Here.
Councilor Noon. Councilor Robinson.
Here.
Excellent. So once again, the Lowell City Council Goal Development for staff for the 2025 process. We are joined by Dr. Osborne from the HR department, as well as Mary Accardi and Margaret Arsenault. And we will pass it off to you, Mary. Go ahead.
All right, great. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming in a little early tonight. This is really important. I'm excited to be back. I was here a few months ago with a subcommittee, and this work is a product of that. Just a quick introduction. My name is Mary Accardi. I lead the HR practice at the Collins Center for Public Management, and one of the things we do is work with cities and towns and other public entities on all kinds of things, including performance evaluation, succession planning, classification, compensation. And tonight we're here to help facilitate your process for setting goals and expectations using this formal system. And we will go from there. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Margaret Arsenault, who will introduce herself, and then we'll jump right in. I believe you all know Neil. He needs no introduction.
Okay, good evening. Margaret Arsenault, and again, I'm one of the other associates from the Collins Center for Public Management. And so packets were sent out to you, but in case you didn't get a chance to either read through those or copy those ahead of time, they actually are in front of you. There are two pieces there. Basically, this meeting is a chance to be a working meeting to really capture your thoughts and ideas on what should be the priority goals for both the city manager, the city auditor, and the city clerk positions, which fall under the city council. And so the overall process is we'll be collecting your information, we'll be collating that, putting that together, we'll be coming back to work with the town, the subcommittee, on drafting those goals in a more kind of cohesive, collated form. That will come back to all of you to then have a chance to comment on, and also have the staff will have a chance to look at them and think about them and comment on before they're finally finalized by the council for this performance year. So that's part of the new process that you're transitioning into when you think about your performance management process, forms, procedures for the three positions that report to the City Council. So what we want to jump in is, because we have a very small amount of time, basically now until 6:20, before you have to get ready for the full City Council meeting that's occurring right after this, is really, again, this is a working meeting to collect your thoughts and ideas on this process. So the form that is the larger form that has kind of the blank sheet, some of you may have had a chance to look at this and make some notes and things like that ahead of time. Some of you may not. That's fine. Here will be an opportunity for you to do that, because we want to collect that thinking together. So let me say, on this form are all of the categories that are considered the performance categories in the current evaluation form for the city manager position. And also, we're using these performance categories as kind of a jumping off point to also create the goals for the city auditor and the city clerk. And so how we're going to do that, and what's the best way to do that? Maybe turn this on. Shut that on.
We're technology wizards. You can carry it. Just use that.
Carry it around. Thank you. You guys have more experience with this. Not so much. So what we basically want to do is, you have noticed that there are sheets up here. There are Post-its in front of you. What we want to do is, again, collect your ideas, and then we're going to give you a chance to read through that information and do a little bit of sorting of this. And the reason we like to do it this way with Post-its and on Post-it paper is, in our own experience, when folks start talking in a room, often, it doesn't give as much opportunity to collect as much information as possible from everybody on this, what they want to see as the goals and the priorities. So this is really our chance to do that in a larger sense. And the example of what we're going to ask you to do is we have a sheet here for each of the performance categories. So there are 6 performance categories, and we also created what we'll call an other sheet in case you have some thoughts or ideas that don't fall under those particular performance categories. We have a place to capture those. And what we're going to ask you to do is take a moment in silence, kind of in your area, and we're going to ask you to fill out some Post-its based on what you see should be the goal/priority for this performance year for the city manager, the city auditor, and the city clerk. If you don't have something to put under each performance category, that's fine. If you don't have something for each person under each performance category, that's fine. We're really just trying to collect as much of your thinking as possible. So as an example, let me just finish my thought, and then you'll fill out a Post-it or more. You'll come and put it up here under each of the categories. So here's city auditor, city clerk. So, these were just some of my pretend thinking about priorities or things like that. And one way to help you keep track of that when you do this is each of the performance categories are numbered. So you'd start with, leadership is number 1, which is the first on your sheet, and go from there. So I find it very helpful to write a little number in the corner of my Post-it, so when I come to stick it up here, I know the appropriate place to put it, right? And so we'd start with leadership over here as number 1 and walk through. Great. So I'm sorry.
Awesome. No, thank you very much. I appreciate all the work. So I think, and anybody can chime in when they want. As far as specific goals, I think we would reserve that. I know we have a couple of weeks until the new fiscal year starts, and we will discuss that with the city manager. I think what I'm looking for, at least, is the process of how to get to where we want to get to go. And then if we're going to use this, that's great. But I'm more of looking of whether the goals is A, B, C, or D, just how to put those in place and to push those goals forward over the course of a year. Not as much as specific goals just for tonight. I'm not sure if anybody's ready for that this evening. Because we will have stuff on a larger level, and then small stuff too, right? So when you asked us for Post-its with specific goals on them, I don't know if anybody here is ready for that per se, but more of the process of how to get started, how to maybe push the manager towards those goals at the end of the year, or to ask him or her what the process is to get there. But as far as being specific, I'm not sure if we're at that point in time, if that makes sense to you. Good, John. Yeah.
Just going off what the mayor just spoke about, I was thinking that the Collins Group was going to come up with their ideas and comments going along with the job descriptions of each of the individuals in concert with Mr. Osborne. So I understand where you're going. I just wanted you to know my thought process was that I was hoping to have ideas and comments and suggestions and opinions from the Collins Group before, so we could gather that information, put it together, and come up with a cohesive plan, like I said, in concert with Mr. Osborne. So thank you.
So, go ahead, Chuck.
I don't mean any disrespect. I appreciate that you're trying to help us, but in 30 years, I judged these 3 people, not the city employees, because none of the city employees work for me. Only those 3 people. Now, the city manager, I judge him every single day. I don't need it on paper to judge this person. I judge him every single day, as I have all the others for all the years that I've been here. And if I see that this person is getting along with people, being responsive to me, and not just me, my colleagues, and gives us information, doesn't hold things back, shares with us. This is the person I want, and I've seen all those qualities, and I appreciate that. Now, let's take the city auditor. I see her sit there, and she does her job, but what she does in her office, I have no idea. She could be one son of a gun, which I know Kelly isn't, but I don't know that because I don't work there. So what do I do when I'm going to evaluate them? I go into the auditor's office and I talk to the people that work there, and I say, how's the auditor treat you? How's this, that, or the other? I don't know how to put it on a poster and put it on the thing like that. The city clerk, how does he respond to me? When I call and ask him and he's attentive and he does his job and I see him do that to everybody, then he's the guy for me, and I've seen that. So I don't need this scientific this, that, and the, I don't mean to discredit you, but I see it as I count it as I see it. Every single time I'm in their presence, or I place a phone call and they give me an answer, not the answer I'm looking for sometimes, but they're honest. So these are the things I evaluate people with my heart. How are they doing for this city? And I see the sincerity. Oh, I have seen, not with this administration, but in the past, that I didn't like what I've seen or I heard. It bothered me, but I see it, and so I'm glad we're not, evaluating Neil Osborne, because I don't know him that well, but I know of him, and if I was going to evaluate him, I'd go down and ask the people that work there, how is Neil doing? I mean, what do you think, this or that? So I'm sorry what you're saying. I'm trying to follow it, but I have my own old-fashioned rules here that I got right here, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, if you don't mind. So I would just comment that we did have a discussion about starting to do this work, about having kind of a data-driven, I know you said you lead with your heart, and I understand that, but we were talking about just having a set of goals where everyone knows what they're working towards at the end of the year. And I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it needs to go to subcommittee to have more discussion, to compile what has been discussed on this floor, which may be things, notes that I have about starting negotiations around a shared facility subcommittee was a big discussion. The miles of roads that get paved. The new data, we have a 311 system. Why do we have it if we're not going to compile the data and see that people are being responded to? So those are the type of initiatives that I see as being part of a performance evaluation. But maybe it's just, maybe we need to do a little bit of the legwork up front to give these are the discussions that we've had. Or maybe it's the will of the committee not to do it at all, but this was voted on to start doing the work. So I'm open either way.
Well, I'd like to jump in and kind of maybe set the tone a little bit. I think what we're asking, or the process, maybe I was not clear. We met with the subcommittee. We worked with the subcommittee, the plan you have in front of you, which was loosely, a technical term, based on Cambridge's plan. And then what we talked about at the subcommittee was, did we really want a smaller group set the priorities for the larger group? We heard feedback that your current form of simple checkoffs was not sufficient. So that's why we're here. We're not asking, and I think maybe the words we're using might be throwing us off. We're not asking you to write the SMART goal for the city manager tonight, pave all the roads by the year 2030. What we're asking are your individual priority objectives. What are the 3 things that are most important for you? It sounds like some of you are saying, I want to make sure you're good to your staff. So how do we create a goal around that? I'm an HR director. I'm with you. Where do you get your feedback from? But what I'm hearing and what you're saying is, how are they as a manager? That can be worded as a goal, and quite frankly, it's in this sample. So I think rather than ask you what is the goal, we can all talk about, my goal is to implement a new software plan by next Friday, My goal is to get out of here at 6:20. So what I do think it would be helpful to do the exercise of using the sticky notes to say, what are my priorities for each of these positions? You're absolutely right that we are very good at putting that into a goal that I think the larger group could then digest, whether that's through the subcommittee, and that might be what our goal is. But when I sat on that side, it was, we don't want just the subcommittee to set our priorities. So that's the goal of tonight, is to get the individual council members' priorities for each of these positions. And we can focus, if it's easier, on the city manager tonight and feed from that on the other two more statutory positions. You're absolutely right. The job descriptions of those other positions are quite clear of what the responsibilities are. But what are your goals for that? Is it customer service? Is it more technology? Is it an outcome of a larger project? So I think that's how we would want to maybe use the time, because I talk a lot, I'm an extrovert, so I would suck up this time. So it's better to tell me to write my top priorities on a sticky note. So there was another comment.
I think if at the beginning we would have known that we were going to be asked these questions, we could have had them outlined better, because we are in a public forum where it's video to everybody. So, I think everybody in here has a lot of the same goals. We do it every week. The capital planning for the city outlined that. I think when you look at long-term financial goals for not only the city side, but also the school side, and then when you look leadership of the employees, the unions, and the staff, and how we treat people who they actually work with, city staff also. But I think that if we just had these questions in advance, it would have been vetted a lot easier for everyone to be able to write it down. And I did read everything beforehand because I was trying to get prepared for something like this. And I think it's hard for people to sit here and do this in a public forum when if we had them in advance, it would have been a little bit easier to outline those goals, that's all.
I think one of the things that we talk about is this could also be a follow-up survey form that we could then coalesce and put together. Oftentimes people feel put on the spot. However, this is a body, and if you don't want to write it down on a sticky note and you want to just talk about it, we're certainly taking notes. Like when you think about what are your priorities, it's about the customer service. How are you treating employees? That's one area. This is your time. We can use it as you like. We have found that sometimes people will only speak on the superficial level at a public meeting, whereas, and that's, human nature, whereas if you've got the sticky notes, that then you can put on a comment of, maybe the comment is more responsiveness to the public, that sort of thing. And that doesn't mean you're criticizing the incumbent of these three positions. So it's a method to use the sticky note. It's your meeting. So really, we can do what you want. Yes.
So, at the end of the day, the outcome we're looking for with this, the end goal is going to be pretty much developing a formal tool to use to evaluate these three employees. And so, instead of kind of diving in the weeds on individual categories or all that, I think maybe a good starting point, just because this is kind of a first full formal meeting, is coming up with the general categories and the priorities that way. As far as the sticky notes go, maybe it's, as you mentioned, maybe we use what are the three main categories that each of us would like to see, put them up there, and then see where the overlap is, because that's going to be, okay, out of the 11 people, 7 of you said leadership is one of the categories that you want on here. Find out what the common theme is and start carving out at least what the general categories might be, I think, to be used before we start diving into specifics, because as the mayor said, specifics, I don't think anybody was considering any of that at this point. I think it's more so let's draft and come up with the tool that's going to be used.
I think Councilor Robinson has brought up a great point. I think it is by category. The question I do have, obviously you have undertaken this, but Mr. Osborne, what has been your input in this process? I mean, you've been an HR director in the past. How have, I'm not sure in municipalities, but how do you think things are developing on something like this? But I want to make sure it's noted that Councilor Robinson, I think that's the way to go, is what the categories are that we're going to be looking at and what we can really hit.
Sure. You're heading down the right path, and it's a little bit choppy at first, but once you get to figure out where your main priorities are, maybe there'll be a chance to maybe send it back into the subcommittee. You can do a little bit more fashioning, get them a little bit more clear idea of what's needed, and then it comes back to the whole to vote on it, just to make sure that the subcommittee didn't go awry. So you're doing the necessary work that creates the plan so the employees know exactly what they need to do, and also all of you know that you are directing them in the way that makes sense for the city. So we're in the weeds right now, but this is the part of the process that will get you where you want to go.
And real quick, so I think it's easy for us to evaluate the city manager because we talk all the time, and they constant communication, and you see results from answers from questions that are asked. How would you suggest that we evaluate our auditor and our city clerk where, we see them 30 times a year? I mean, it's a legit question, because
You as counselors that represent the city residents know what your constituents need. When you boil that down into the work of the clerk, you will lead him in that right direction to make sure the residents are needed. So you haven't clearly said, hey, you need him to take good notes, or you need him to be responsive when you call, typical things that the clerk might do. But again, once you get that down in writing, the clerk knows exactly what he needs to do to satisfy all your needs, and you are satisfying your constituents' needs at the same time. So there's a little bit more work that needs to be done, and maybe you're just setting the broad strokes. You go back to the subcommittee to get to the
yes,
final
you
points.
start the broad strokes, to the point a couple of councils have already made. I mean, and again, I'm not sure. I know this has been talked about for 3 or 4 years, and I'm not sure that the system is actually broken the way we do it now, because basically we don't do it right now. But when things like a facilities department or a 301 system or downtown development and housing, the issues that we bring to the table, homelessness we bring to the table, and then we see the results that are given to us. I think that goes into what we think of the manager, right, or the administration. So, where's the line to be drawn to say those goals aren't being met, or, so I think there's a lot that, just to come tonight and say, give me 3 things that you want the city to work on is kind of, not.
What I would suggest, so that we don't get bogged down, what I'm hearing you all say is that you want to focus on the areas or the subject matters at this meeting. And then we can either do a survey on what are your priorities. We could do a checklist of what we can make that happen. And then we could work with the subcommittee. So what I would suggest is maybe we use the form that has the areas and we just touch on, the first one is leadership. And, do we have the same understanding that right now, do we want these things? And I think that would be a useful use of your time. Go ahead over there.
Absolutely, and I agree with what my colleagues mentioned. I think we can somewhere now, just to add on to what you're saying, I think we're, want to understand the process, at some point get to category and statistics. But right now, I think if we can, go over like what's on the current grade that we have now, to get, the definition of it, like the meaning of it, maybe get some historical data, some statistics from other municipalities. It's almost like a review of case studies of what leadership means, not only for our municipality, but how it's being done in other cities as well, from research and studies and so forth. So could add some data, some historical context to it. I think that'd be helpful.
I totally agree with you. I think that if we just I suggest we start at the top and say, you know, leadership, what does that mean to you? We can certainly, I have extensive we have data from other places of what their goals are for their employees. We want it to be your goals for your employees. And we don't need to overly complicate it, particularly when you have statutory positions that have a role. It's how effective are they being in their job? And what you do to measure that is what's important. So, Council, you wanted to say something, and then I would say maybe we just go through the categories so there's an understanding of what each one means.
That's actually what I was just going to say. Leadership, I guess, you know, that could mean a lot of different things could fit into that. So, you know, an example I thought of as far as leadership would be the department heads, making sure that they're setting goals and and showing their accomplishments each year. I know that's something that actually was missing this year on the budget, where some of the department heads did not do that. So I would want to see that every year, and I would think that would fall under the city manager to make sure that happened. In working with us to set these goals right now, I don't know if that would be a leadership.
I think that's a good point. So if you look at the area of leadership, it says, you know, effectively carrying out the vision and the direction set by the council. You set the vision and direction. What does that look like for you? So when you think about leadership, one of you may say, are the staff happy? The others may say, are the budget's balanced? You know, so that's the kind of thing. I would suppose that everybody thinks leadership is a good category. Anyone disagree that we need, you know, okay. Then the next one is council relationship. What's important to you all about the council relationship?
Throw some in there, Corey.
I mean, I think, go ahead.
Communication.
Oh, there you go. That's what we're all going to say. Yeah.
That's communication, and I think you have it. Collaborative and transparent working relationship. And I mean, I think those three things are huge for any relationship.
I would like to clarify a little bit on communication. I would add proactive communication, because I think that's an important differentiator there.
I actually think that both of them should be combined. Both the leadership and the city council relationship, because you say you're effectively carrying out the vision and direction set by the city council. So it's kind of vague there. So if you use that in a collaborative and transparent working relationship with the city council, I think you might have something there. I just think there's gray area in both of those topics.
I think that'll be a great opportunity when we're done with this to maybe slice it out and work with the subcommittee on where things should fit, because I think you're absolutely right. Those things are, so many of these overlap. You know, if you're not communicating, you're probably not doing much else well. Go ahead, there was another down here.
For me, the relationship with the city council is important because the manager is accessible. We can call him, we can text him, and he responds to our requests. However, what I like to do is to see that the manager will schedule a quarterly meeting face-to-face with councilor to updating councilor on priorities that this council set. So this way we have a more personal interaction with the manager and see where we at on the priority that this council have mandate the manager to do. So that's my preference. In addition to phone call, text, we want an opportunity to meet with him, you know, individually, quarterly. Thank you.
We often have that, we see that in performance evaluations. Too often we wait for the year to be done, and building in quarterly sessions can be a very helpful goal, and that can be the responsibility of the manager to coordinate that. We can note that and add that to the potential list of goals under that section, but something like more regular meetings to communicate. I know you have constant contact, but having it be about how are we doing on our goals is a good suggestion.
I think that, clear, concise policies that's what our role is. We're policymakers. So the differentiation we're having here with you guys and us is we're policy side. You're used to dealing with operations side. So that's a major difference between what we do and what you guys are used to dealing with. So it's a major difference. So we don't have the day-to-day function that you're used to seeing employees have. We're policymakers. And I think clear and concise policies have less communication to them. Because if people are following policies and they're doing it fairly across the board, all of us don't really see many calls. But it's when those policies people feel like are not written and defined well that you get that change in. So, and I think that everybody would agree with that most of our calls are from constituents who feel as though my road didn't get paved as quick as the street next to me, or, my road's worse than this. Or when we look at capital planning, we have the same issues as, we're a big city. We get a lot of state funding coming in to offset tax base. So how do we spend that? And that's really where we are as a driver, not, so the manager's function is to communicate policy to us, not us to him, as is being outlined right here. We're not here to say, you need to do, we're policymakers, not operations people. And I think that's a
Right.
big differentiation from when you started this whole process to where
I
we
think
are.
that you're bringing up a really good point. I think the frame that I would suggest you think of is sometimes it's easier to go negative than positive, because how do you know when the city manager is not doing their job? So, because it is your responsibility, one of the biggest things you do is hire these people. And that's not policy. That is leadership and management. So when you think about, yes, who approves policies? Is the policies being carried out fairly? That is a great way to word a goal and a measurement. So that's, I think we're saying the same things a little slightly differently. It's not, I'm the HR director and I want my benefits clerk to make sure open enrollment is a success. That's a task. Maybe it's a touchy subject, sorry.
Very very.
I'm thinking maybe even going back a little bit further here, when we look at this, is that maybe we tie this into the job description, where we can actually see, when the job is put out, these are what we're looking for in a leader. This is what we're looking for from a communicator. Something of those lines to make it easier to put something like this together, rather than just, nice force, big words and, all that time is 4-syllable word. You know what I mean? I feel like we're getting ahead of the horse here.
I do think the subcommittee did use the description and certainly the agreement. So many of these are in that. And you're not going to have every single responsibility listed, but it's going to be the general theme. So I think we're on the right track, and you bring up.
Even like I said about the first 2 points, combining them, I was
Right.
actually thinking just about the city manager and wasn't even contemplating the city clerk or the auditor in that.
I think we're going to work with the subcommittee on those other two positions after we get this done, because you're right, that is much more straightforward.
Right.
And it's, they have statutory requirements. So what I would do is maybe move on to the management, which gets to some of the points about the organization and how is the management going. And then we had one more comment over here in the meantime.
Thank you. As we're going through the broad categories, I think, I don't know how my colleagues feel, but city council relationship, is that really one of the very important categories? I think communication is is kind of working its way out of this general category that we're discussing. Because communication, it goes back to, as my colleague mentioned, with even the policy. Our existing policies or new policies that are being implemented communicated well to the department heads. Our expectations being communicated well to the employees in the department heads. All of these things, and I think communication is at the core of everything we're discussing when it comes to this. So, I mean, city council relationship, that's going to vary. That's relationships vary just based on human nature. But communication, when we're talking about evaluation of an employee, I think communication is at the core of everything that's just been brought up.
That's a great point. And I would actually, maybe council relationship is under communication as one bullet versus, I think I love saying this, you're right, counselor.
Now, the next thing is management. I think that's very, very important. And what I'm going to say, and I know you're scared because I say things that people don't want to hear, but I'm going to tell you that is very, very important. And I've said this before. I personally feel that a manager is only as good as the people around him. I firmly, firmly believe that because we selected the city manager, but we didn't select the people around him. He more or less did. And he did a great job in that. Because when you look at the CFO, you look at the treasurer, you look at the different people, you look at Neil sitting over here, he has done a tremendous job with that because they work very hard to make him look good. And when he looks good, we all do. So it just is a circle effect. And so I think that's very, very important. And that's my comment about that.
Yeah, for me, management, if I may, management for me, it's critical as I call Manager Golden as the CEO of the company, which is the City of Lowell is a company, and he is the CEO. For me, management is a complete, comprehensive review of the department level staffing, efficiency and performance. And I also would like to see the manager under the management to modernize city process by accelerating digital transformation, that meaning that, permitting licensing similar to other city, that if a contractor want to apply, he or she can just go online, apply for the permit, and then he can see where the level of the application process is online, digitally. So that's a long-term part of the management that I like to see.
Go ahead, I'm not the boss
Okay,
you
calling
want. Shout
names.
it out when you need it.
Okay.
So I think that planning is a big part of management in a city this size, whether it's capital planning, whether it's financial planning, whether it's budgeting. I think urban updates, housing. So I think planning is a big piece to that management category as we go through it.
Well, I was just adding to Councilor Yams, which I thought was an excellent update, but an excellent contribution, but just also the technology in general, like the online payment platforms, just kind of bringing us into the days, the times that we live in right now. I think that we're a little bit behind with the online portal for residents.
Okay, so the next category, I do think planning may be one. We've got a later category that, city operations. I think there's opportunity to maybe mix some of those together. I think there's overlap. But community engagement, the role of the manager being one of the faces of the municipality. You all are really more of the face, but are there goals for what the city manager should be doing in terms of community engagement, either being out there too much or not enough?
For me, the City of Lowell is a really diverse community, and we have many population whose English is not their primary language. So I would like to see that the city would develop a modernized city process to launch a multilingual, mobile-friendly community engagement platforms, and also establish a quarterly community listening session under each neighborhood. We have 8 districts in the city of Lowell, so the city manager, not just the staff, department head or staff who hold the meeting, but I like the manager to also sit and listen to some of those community meeting engagement. So,
if I may, when you talk about diverse community and engagement, all that, right? In terms of diverse community, you also have to look at every department have to be diverse, reflecting the people that you serve. So management need to have a plan, and that plan need to be communicated to the department head. If you have DI officers or HR in this case, director, that communication need to be had and has to be have a plan in place, short and long term, and how you communicate that to the department head. You can't be just saying, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and you don't follow through on that.
I think follow-through is an excellent measure in when you're evaluating somebody, regardless of what the goal is. Is there follow-through? Is there follow-up? We can have a policy, but if it's not implemented, communicated, and practiced, where's the follow-up? I know when you have constituents call and something hasn't been followed up on, that is certainly a measurement you can put in there. So I do think, and also piggybacking on what the counselor mentioned about more regular formal meetings of how are we doing this. Too often we see time and time again, oh, it's 1 month till the goals are due, and have we looked at the performance? Are we, so I think some sort of build-in is good, and I think follow-up, and that can be a measurable goal. When we deal with employees, whether they're direct employees of a board or a department head, if we're not communicating about it, how do we know if we're doing well or not? Mm-hmm. Usually you say, well, if I'm not complaining, it must be okay. But I think that building simple things like that will really help you have a more robust conversation about it.
If I can add, I think this category is probably where the 311 data would come in,
Yes.
the percentage of people that they've responded to. And I mean, I don't know the exact way that we would figure it out because we haven't even really seen the data right now from 311. But I think that this area, and also possibly surveys that are done for residents, any surveying about, resident satisfaction or anything like that, we could incorporate into this area.
One thing I'd like to just quickly note on community engagement, I think one of the most important times for the manager to be a visible leader and to be engaged with the community is in times of crisis. The manager needs to be the point person because he is, as Councilor Yem mentioned, the CEO of the city. So he needs to be the one, or she needs to be the one who's willing to step up and engage the community and whatever other stakeholders in a situation where everyone's going to be looking at that person for the answers. So to be able to hold someone accountable and say, yes, you were able to do this, or no, you weren't, I think is an important topic for us to consider.
Okay, we're running a little bit out of time, so what I'm going to do is jump to page 4. I think we've touched on some of the culture and the diversity on page 3, and we will do a follow-up survey. But what I want to do is jump to, I think what I'm hearing you say more about is page 4, which is city operations and fiscal management, in terms of priorities. These are 2 very broad but big categories. If there are any thoughts on that?
So the 311 was brought up, and I think that might be a better fit as opposed to community engagement, more city operations. And what the 311 allows is back of the house stuff to where the manager and his team can dial in and actually see average response times from everything from a pothole, the time that complaint came in and when it's repaired, to stop sign installation or the entire gamut of what's offered for services on the app. So I think that's where city operations, and now that's when, with that data, you can really expect to key in on some efficiencies, especially with quarterly meetings. How are we doing this quarter? Okay, you know, and that's going to vary by season, obviously in New England, in certain areas, but once we have that data, then we can say, well, it'd be great if we could shave maybe a day or two of, in response, off in this area, and that would be an efficiency that the council might be looking for, and with the goal set at by the end of the third quarter, you know, and it helps kind of to steer where the specific efficiencies the community as well as the council might be looking to go.
I agree with that. I think also when we're talking about city operations, the vision and the ability to innovate and improve on processes and policies to be able to deliver those city services in a more efficient way, whether that's filling a pothole quicker or, you know, improving the time it takes to get a PO approved and get work going, whatever it is. Somebody who's constantly looking for ways to improve and ways to build the city into a more modern enterprise, and not someone who's going to sit back and say, well, that's the way we've always done it. You know, I think it's important that someone's forward-looking and someone is willing to try things out and take a risk and see what can be improved.
And I'll add in this, I think it would go in this area, management of vendors and contracts and projects like the high school project, the ARPA projects that we have coming to completion. I think that would be fitting in this area as well.
And then the last one is technically fiscal management, budgets, finance. Clearly you have, is Connor watching? Robust finance. You know, but all of, like HR, finance sprinkles into every operation, right? You either have the people or the vendor and the money. I do think the innovation and efficiency, it may be a great category by itself. What we would like to do in closing is take what we've heard, and this is very helpful. What we will do is put together a synopsis of what we came up with. I think we will go back to the subcommittee to kind of fine tune. I think we will draft, knowing what we know about the auditor and the clerk role, an outline which is really going to be a little slimmer than your city manager evaluation, and maybe give the subcommittee a tool and a draft to look at, and we will go from there. So you've got 1 minute less to give us last closing comments.
Well, I would just, if my colleagues don't mind, I'm thinking that perhaps because as Councilor Gitchie brought up, not completely knowing what the process was going to entail, if we can take these forms that we have here and possibly take a couple weeks even, I know we're in the middle of budget sessions, kind of compile any additional feedback that we want to put, and we can put it together and possibly go through it.
Sure. What I would suggest, and this is the will of the council, would you like us to send this in a survey form so you could fill out a form online that would feed to us rather than have to do paper and submit it?
Yeah.
Would that be okay?
That would be great.
That
I
would be
think that'd
good.
be a little simpler.
Yeah. Right.
Right, and do a
Yes.
little more work on them and kind of, then we
Alright.
can have more to compile, you know, and make sure that we're hearing everyone's voices here, so.
That will be our plan, and we will go from there. And when we send that link, we'll give a summary of what happened tonight and what the next steps will be.
Yeah, I think it was good. We all got going.
You all did get going.
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're done.
Nice work.
On behalf of the mayor, I'll go a motion to adjourn by Council Noon, seconded by Council Yam.
Meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.
I just did a motion to adjourn on your behalf.